Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. Sorry that I look like death in this video. I am pretty tired because we have just moved house and as you all may have noticed, last week was certainly a year. But this video is going to be my Geekly wrap up for the week of May 25th through May 31st. Now, I know I said that I was going to include May 25th as part of last week's wrap up, but then George Floyd was murdered, and between his death and then Breonna Taylor's murder and the other instances of Black people being murdered by the police all last week and these subsequent protests, where was I going with this? Oh, right, in the midst of all of that, I ended up not including the one book that I ended up reading this week because I finished it right on the 25th and then basically did no reading else for the rest of the week. I ended up spending all of my time and energies on organizing and trying to support the people that are protesting with boots on the ground as best as I can. I myself am not physically able to go out and be boots on the ground this time around. So it has been really interesting learning about organizing from a different side of things. And I have the amazing disability advocates and educators, Alice Wong and Imani Barbarin, to thank for that, because without them, I don't know that I would have conceived of this as activism and as an important part of disability justice and an important part of the Black Lives Matter movement overall. So if, like me, you can't actually go out and protest in the streets, take heart. There are other things that you can do to get involved and help make sure that if you are white, you are using your privilege for good instead of just for yourself. I made a video last week about being white on BookTube, and there are a lot of resources that are linked in the description box of that video, so I'll make sure that it's linked somewhere on the screen here. But since things are changing really quickly, I will be updating the description box of this video and subsequent videos with other things that you are able to do to get involved in ways that you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. And I really encourage all of you to take a good look at what you have to contribute to this and then do the best that you can to contribute to this movement, because it is essential and necessary and important and, frankly, your duty as a human being. So, yeah, we are going to talk about books. We have a couple other housekeeping things to get out of the way first. First of all, thank you all so much for 500 subscribers. That sort of happened really quickly last week while I was in the middle of the move and while I was in the middle of just making up the response that I did for the Black Lives Matter movement. But thank you all very much for your support. It really means the world to me that you take the time to watch these videos and share them with other people, and I appreciate that. So again, thanks from the bottom of my heart. I will probably be doing something fun or interesting to celebrate 500 subs once I get a little bit more of my house unpacked, because right now I'm a bit of a mess. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, another bit of housekeeping that is also related to what's going on with Black Lives Matter, is what's been going on with Book Outlet and Book of the Month. So I've never purchased anything from Book Outlet, but after hearing everything that they had to do with basically using Naya from Naya Reads and Smiles as their token person of color on their vlogger friends, and the racist and discriminatory way that they have treated other Black booktubers that have applied to be vlogger friends and have been rejected from that position because they are so-called not family friendly, I will not be supporting Book Outlet now or ever. I don't think you should be either if you're watching this video. Granted, like, that is your personal choice to exercise and I can't control what you do, but don't support Book Outlet, okay? Like, we cannot support companies that try to make the book world and the book industry more hostile for Black people and more hostile for people of color than it already is. We just can't do that. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is Book of the Month. So, Book of the Month has had similar issues when it comes to not hiring Black people and not hiring people of color to be their affiliates. They have had issues when it comes to the number of books that they publish in a year by Black authors, not having many Black authors or authors of color invited to be repeat authors and anything like that. And frankly, after hearing the way that Book of the Month as a company has treated Black booktubers and Black book bloggers, I can no longer in good conscience support that company. So I will not be purchasing anything from Book of the Month going forward. I may still have some Book of the Month books that I talk about in my videos, but those are things that I have already purchased, and unfortunately, there is no way to undo that. They don't, accept returns or anything like that. There's no way I could get that money back and donate it elsewhere to less racist organizations. So you will still see me talking a little bit about the Book of the Month books that I already have, but I'm not supporting them at all going forward. You shouldn't do that either. Again, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you how to live your life, but I really think that, like, if you really care about being an ally and supporting and uplifting Black voices on BookTube, supporting Book of the Month is like incompatible with that. So won't be doing Book of the Month anymore. I did decide to donate the $15 a month that I was giving Book of the Month instead to the Well-Read Black Girl Festival, which is a literary festival that is created and organized by and for Black women. They have a collection of essays that I read earlier this year that also is by the same title, Well-Read Black Girl, that is by a bunch of Black women authors talking about their experiences as writers and readers. That was a really excellent book. I encourage you to check that out. And yeah, take that $15 that you would spend on Book of the Month and donate to Black literary organizations, use it to buy a book from a Black-owned business or something like that, or give to a Black creator's Patreon or Ko-fi or whatever their crowdfunding thing is. So that's the little bit of business that I had to talk about. Let's go ahead and talk about the one book that I managed to read that week. The book was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is by Grady Hendrix. This is a horror novel that truly tested my abilities as a reader, because I don't know if y'all know this, but I really don't do horror. I don't like horror. I am a super huge weenie with an overactive imagination. I like things that are creepy and spooky, but I don't tend to really like straight up horror where there's a lot of gore and a lot of really disturbing elements to it. That's just something that my brain cannot handle in a healthy way. But I decided that I wanted to read this book because I wanted to go out of my comfort zone a little bit. I wanted to try something new, and also I was kind of drawn in by the quirkiness and the oddness of the title and the cover. And this book was not what I hoped it would be. I'll preface this by saying I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because while the book was okay, it was good, it was finely written, the problems that I had with this book were so much that I think it really held the story back from being truly a great story. So this is a story that centers around Patricia, who is a white housewife, takes place in the late 80s, early 90s in the Charleston, South Carolina area. And Patricia and her friends start this book club where together they are reading all of these lurid true crime novels and things like that. And then there is this mysterious stranger, James Harris, that comes to their town, and Patricia at first is very taken in by him because he's very suave, he's very debonair and well-spoken, and it leads her to overlook a bunch of the sort of red flags that pop up around James Harris, like how come he never goes outside when the sun is out, or the fact that he doesn't have any identification proving that he is who he says he is, or the fact that something mysterious is happening to the children in the Black neighborhood that is next door to this predominantly white neighborhood where Patricia and her friends live, and the kids are getting sick there, they are going missing, they are coming home injured and lethargic and depressed, and truly terrible things are happening to these Black children. But white supremacy being what it is, it just sort of allows these ladies to ignore that because of a lot of different things that white people use as racially coded words that allow them to basically, like, well, allow us really to absolve ourselves of any complicity in racism. It is really interesting now, going back and being able to review this book through the lens of what has happened recently. So, like, even though I got out my thoughts about the race dynamics in this book beforehand, like, really going back and reviewing it in light of everything that has happened recently has been very sobering. I'm not gonna lie. So, like I said, there is James Harris, who is hurting the black children in the neighborhood nearby, and Patricia and her book club basically have to get together and they need to stop him from being a vampire and hurting people. Because this is a horror story, it is very dark and gritty, it is extremely violent, there is a lot of disturbing imagery, there's a lot of death and endangerment of children, of animals, of all kinds of people. There are triggers for sexual assault, triggers for suicide, all of these other things. So, like, if any of those things bother you, maybe don't read this one just yet, or wait until you are in a better headspace to do so. But what I want to talk about that I think was the major drawback of this book was the book set itself up like it was going to be a horror story that had sort of a critical interrogation of race along with it. I was thinking maybe it was going to be a little bit more like Get Out or Us, which are the horror movies directed by Jordan Peele. Us, by the way, when I watched Us, the clone thing scared me so badly that I threw up outside of the movie theater afterwards. Like, I was so scared watching that movie that I literally had to run out of the theater and just Ralphed in the street next to a parked car. It was intense. So when I tell you I'm a weenie and, like, I have an overactive imagination, I mean that, like, watching a horror movie made me throw up. So I thought that this book was going to do a lot more to, like, engage with the racism that is both implicit and explicit in this, and it really didn't, because the book sets up this opportunity to do that kind of through the character of Mrs. Green. Mrs. Green is a black woman that Patricia meets because she comes to work for Patricia's family as a caretaker for Patricia's elderly mother-in-law. So Mrs. Green is, like, the only person of color that Patricia has a significant relationship with or regular interactions with or anything like that. Otherwise, the neighborhoods are pretty much isolated from each other. There's not much, like, back and forth between the white and black neighborhoods. And Mrs. Green is the one that, like, draws to Patricia's attention that something bad is happening to the black kids in the neighborhood. And then Patricia, when she goes to deal with it, comes across as extremely white saviory. Like, here I am, I'm coming into your neighborhood, I'm, like, fixing things up because James Harris is dealing drugs to your children. And there's just all of these implications that, like, somehow the black kids are, you know, adultified too early, or, like, they are just more susceptible to crime. They're more susceptible to, like, they use all of the white ladies in this book use a lot of the Clinton era kind of buzzwords that were, like, racially coded words. Things like calling black children super predators and stuff like that. So a lot of it is really steeped in the, like, white rhetoric and politics of the late 80s, early 90s. And Patricia comes in like she's going to save the black neighborhood, and then she acts all, like, surprised and disappointed when the black people in the neighborhood are not happy about it, which it's like, yeah, what did you think was going to happen? I don't know. And then Mrs. Green was still, you know, working together with Patricia because they were trying to stop this guy from being a vampire and, like, eating people and hurting them even more. But she really just then ended up becoming this character that kind of only existed to fix Patricia's mistakes, especially towards the end when they get to the point where they have to figure out how to kill and get rid of the vampire. She sort of becomes this character that gets, like, one sort of little stump speech about how white people ignore black people's problems even though they're right next door, even though, like, we should be caring about each other as members of a community and as, you know, people that we all want to keep our children safe and stuff like that. And then she sort of just goes back to, like, not being a real character and doing whatever Patricia tells her. So I thought that that was really poorly handled. because the book sets itself up as this thing that's going to be like, okay, we're going to talk about like the problems that are caused by racism, implicit and explicit here. My dog is barking outside. And then that never really happened. So that bothered me about the book. Another thing that bothered me too was that a lot of the like horror of the plot, and especially the harm that James Harris did to people, was treated very differently because of how we as a like American society privilege like white women's supposed purity and innocence over that of black women. Like American society is founded upon the hypersexualization and also like desexualization of black women. Like we have all of these studies that demonstrate that black girls are overly sexualized from a much younger age than white girls. And there is this idea that, you know, white women need to be sexually pure and they need to be protected and stuff like that. And there is a big fucking difference in the way that that's treated in this book. Like at the beginning of the book, a very young black girl is raped by James Harris, and it happens on the page. And it is treated as scary, but not in the same way that like the rape of a grown white woman is treated much later in the book as though it is like the worst thing and gets so much more page time and so much more involvement from the other characters and stuff. And that really sat with me the wrong way, because if you are somehow like desensitized to child rape because of the child's race, first of all, that's not something you should become desensitized to, and second of all, that's really racist. So that was something that bothered me about this book. And like I said, I gave it 3 stars because it was fine, but like those are things that are gonna, I think, stick with me about the way that this book handled its topics. So that is going to do it for this week's Geekly wrap-up. I know that a couple of people have read this book on BookTube. I know Brody did a review of it. They also mentioned the importance of seeking out reviews by Black reviewers for this book too, so I will link anything that I find down below in the description box. I remember going and like looking through some of the reviews before I filmed this video and such, so you can go ahead and read those if you like. But if you like this video and you'd like to see more of what I do, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, because that way you'll get updates every time I post a new video. As always, thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!